Most of us have experienced the specific exhaustion of trying to explain a simple, logical point to someone who is clearly not trying to understand it. You provide the facts, you simplify the steps, and yet the gap between you only grows. We usually measure intelligence by how many facts a person can memorize, or how many big words they can fit into a sentence. We treat it like a classroom score or a test result. But cognitive capacity shows up more clearly in the invisible habits of a conversation, how a person listens, pivots, and handles being wrong. This bell curve shows how intelligence is actually distributed across a population. While most people believe they are smarter than average, that is mathematically impossible. A significant portion of the people you interact with daily are operating in these average or lower percentiles, and expecting high-level logic from every source is a guaranteed recipe for frustration. Recognizing the 7 behavioral traits of low cognitive capacity allows you to predict when a conversation is headed toward a dead end. Once you see the patterns, you can stop wasting your mental energy. We have to stop evaluating people based on what they know and start looking at how their brains process a conflict. An argument often hits its first wall when a person refuses to acknowledge the complex gray areas of a situation. Intelligence is often the ability to hold 2 opposing ideas in mind at once, but that requires a level of mental effort that not everyone can sustain. Processing multi-layered information consumes massive amounts of internal energy. To prevent mental exhaustion, a lower capacity brain will aggressively shrink the world into binary terms. Everything is either entirely good or entirely bad, completely right or completely wrong. This shows up in a person's vocabulary through the constant use of extremes. Listen for words like always, never, everyone, or nobody. These are tools for turning a complicated universe into something small and digestible. This oversimplified worldview naturally leads to an unearned sense of confidence. While smart individuals often doubt themselves because they realize how much they don't know, lower cognitive ability often produces total certainty. This graph plots the Dunning-Kruger effect. As knowledge increases slightly, confidence spikes to its peak. Lacking specific cognitive skills, they lack the hardware to notice their own incompetence. This creates a literal blind spot. Their brain physically cannot see where they are wrong. This means the argument is over before it begins. If a person cannot evaluate their own flaws, they cannot hear your logic. When you present objective facts to bridge this gap, you often hit the 3rd trait, the inability to separate personal emotion from reality. In a highly developed mind, facts dictate feelings. If the facts change, the understanding of the world changes with them. For a person with lower capacity, this is reversed. Their temporary feelings dictate what they accept as permanent facts. If they feel upset by a piece of information, they automatically categorize that information as false. This is the difference between treating beliefs like software or treating them like a tattoo. An adaptable mind treats its worldview like software, constantly overwritten by accurate data. A lower capacity mind treats beliefs like a tattoo. When facts contradict their worldview, their brain enters a defensive state, actively shattering incoming data to protect their identity. They will invent wildly illogical excuses to dismiss proven facts, just to maintain their emotional comfort. At this point, you are no longer having a conversation about the truth. You are watching a person fight a battle to preserve their fundamental identity. When the brain reaches a cognitive ceiling and cannot form a reasoned counterargument, it defaults to raw aggression. They will try to dominate the conversation through sheer volume and endless repetition. This stems from a primitive belief that whoever speaks the loudest is the winner. They treat the conversation like a battlefield, where the goal is to survive the exchange rather than to understand it. This breakdown continues long after the argument ends. The 6th trait is a struggle with abstract thinking, the inability to visualize the long-term consequences of a current action. They often confuse simple correlation with causation. This makes it impossible for them to trace a current disaster back to an impulsive decision they made weeks ago. They see their life as a series of random events rather than a chain of cause and effect. This leads to the final trait, a paralyzing inability to handle constructive feedback. Instead of adjusting their behavior to get better results, they deflect responsibility and play the victim. perceiving any attempt to help as a humiliation. They are effectively insulated from reality, blocking every path that could lead to personal growth. Understanding these 7 behavioral traits serves a purpose far beyond judging others or feeling superior. The goal is self-preservation. It is about protecting your own peace of mind and conserving your limited emotional energy. When you realize a person simply does not have the mental hardware to process a logical perspective, you can stop fighting. You can let go of the anger that comes from expecting rational behavior from an irrational source. True intelligence is knowing exactly when to speak your mind and when it is more efficient to simply walk away. By recognizing these patterns, you empower yourself to navigate a complex world without getting dragged down by the certainty of those who cannot see the gray areas.